Alright, welcome back everyone. My name is Dwight Duffy, and in this tutorial we're going to be taking a look at how to use Excel to do some stock market calculations. We're going to massage some stock market data, and we're going to pick something kind of simple here. We're going to use some existing data and see if we can add to that data and calculate a little bit more. So I've been given a link to the Yahoo quotes section, and specifically a link to the Dow Jones Industrial Average. That's the little caret DJI in case you're trying to look it up. And we've probably all heard the Dow Jones Industrial Average on the radio or on the TV, and it goes up and it goes down. And of course that's closely watched, and there's lots of historical data on that. So under the quotes section, and there's lots of websites that you can get this sort of data, there's a historical prices section, and then we can put in some range of dates. So I'm just going to pick a historical date. I'm going to say October 1st, and I'm going to go 2000 and let's say 8. And let's say I want to just do that one month, that October month of 2008. So I'll go to 31st. 2008, and then I'm simply going to select, let's see, do I want monthly, weekly? That wouldn't make sense. I could do daily. So I'm going to do the daily Dow Jones Industrial Average for the month of October in 2008. So I'm going to click Get Prices. The computer's going to then go out and come back with this data that we see on the screen right here. And it's kind of in reverse chronological order, so it's going to start with the most recent, which was October 31st, 2008, and it's going to work its way back to October 1st. So to get this data over to my spreadsheet, some programs will give you, some websites will give you a download, or download as a comma separated value file, CSV file, or something like that. I'm simply going to highlight this data with my mouse, click and drag, and go down to the bottom corner. And you'll notice what we're grabbing here is the date, what the Dow Jones Industrial Average started at for that day, what its high was, what its low was, and its close. So it opened and closed, and in between it went, possibly higher than it closed, and it may have gone lower than it opened. And then there's some volume, which I don't really care about, but that's of interest to some people. And then there's an adjusted close, and you'll notice that the adjusted close is, typically going to be the same as the close, unless there's been some adjustment. Okay, so I've selected that data. I'm going to right-click and copy. So I right-click and copy that to my clipboard, and then I'm simply going to bring up Excel. I'm going to right-click again, and I'm going to paste that data into Excel. And there we go. And if the cells are too narrow, you're going to see something like these pounds, and you can widen that out a little bit. You may want to do that anyway, just to kind of give yourself a little bit of breathing room. And I'm going to make everything a little smaller down here in the corner, so I have a little bit of room to actually maneuver. All right, so what we want to do for this particular example is I want to figure out how much change there was between the open and the close. I want to figure out what that works out to be in terms of a percentage change, how much percent increase or decrease. And I want to figure out what the intraday range is between the low and the high, because that's sort of a measure of volatility, right? How low did it go? How high did it go? And then down at the bottom, I'm going to calculate an average down here. Okay, so I'm just going to continue here, and I'm going to say, okay, what is my change? So I have created a column for change. I'm going to have another column for percent. I type that in, and then I put in a column for intraday. And I'll go ahead and I'm going to make this a little bigger. Oops. A little bit bigger. Okay, so here we go. So that's going to be my H column, my I column, and my J column based on data that I have here. Okay, so what is the change going to be? The change is going to be what my close was minus the open. So, if it closes at a higher number than it opened, then the change would be positive, right? You'd have a big number minus a little bit smaller number. So I'm going to say equal, and my close is playing Battleship here, E2, you can see that highlighted, minus, and then the open was B2. And when I hit enter, it calculates that the change, it's 145 points higher than it opened. And now I can just grab that formula, that E2 minus B2, and I can grab the corner and just simply drag down, and I can see that some of the values are up and some of the values are down. And we had one day here where it actually went up almost 1,000 points, right, when it went from an open of 81 and closed at over 9,000. That was a pretty incredible day. And we can figure out what all of these are in terms of percentages. Remember, to calculate a percentage, I'm going to take my change, whatever the change was, and I'm going to subtract that by the open. So the small number, which is the change, divided by the open, because I want to see what percentage change it is. And it could be a negative or a positive, right, number. So I'm going to take my change, which is H2, and I'm going to divide by my open, which is B2. So I can see the change divided by the open. So we're going to take H2, which is the change, divided by B2, which is the open. So the small number, which is the change, divided by the bigger number, which is what that Dow Jones Industrial opened at, and that should give us a percentage change. So we're going to go ahead and hit enter, and I get a percentage as a kind of a decimal, 0.015, which would be 1.5, a little over 1.5%, almost 1.6%. I can click on that cell and I can hit percent up here under general format, change that to a percentage, and then add some decimal places, and probably to 1/100 of a percentage point would probably be appropriate. And I can see that it was 1.59%, and now I can grab that, drag down, and again I can see that, right, I have typically 1.5% increases. Here's 0.79 down, but on this date that we talked about, which was October 28, 2008, we had a 10% increase in one day. Then we went down 2%, 3%, then up 2%, down 5, 2. This was back when we were kind of in the dark days of the stock market, and we saw a lot of negative days here. All right, so now the final thing we wanted to take a look at here was the intraday, which simply means whatever the high was minus the low, and then whatever the difference between that is how big a swing we had in the prices that day. So the high, of course, is C2, and then we'll subtract the low, which will be, in this case, D2. And then whatever that high and low swing is, that's going to be how much the market actually swung that day. So this is really where we see the volatility that was going on back in 2008. So it actually swung 300 points between the low and the high. So the day traders, right, they're making out like bandits, potentially. And you can see in one case here, there was only a 1.3% change for the day, but the range in the low and the high was over 1,000 points, which is really breathtaking if you think about it. All right, and so I've got this intraday range selected. Actually, I don't have it selected anymore, but I want to calculate the average. What's the average intraday? I'm going to put average here. I'm going to calculate the average intraday. So the way I do that is simply select all these intraday range numbers. and select them including the cell where I want to calculate the average, and then I can simply come up here to auto sum and click on the average. See where it says average, or more fundamentally I can just say equal AVG parentheses, and then I have to see, well, what is my starting point, which was J2 colon all the way down to J24 in this case. And you can see that selected that range of cells. Oh, you know what? The formula should be average, not AVG. Thinking of something different. Sorry. So let's do it again. Equal AV average. I should have paid attention. Average. Now I can put J2 colon J24. And there we go. So my average intraday range was almost 600 point. It's almost a 600 point swing per day on average during the month of October 2008. All right, so we took some sort of standard boilerplate stock market data that was available, and we calculated the change by doing a calculation that involved a subtraction, and then we calculated the percent by taking that change and dividing it by the open, and then we took the high minus the low to get the intraday. So a great example of the sort of thing that a spreadsheet is really suited to. Okay, that will conclude this tutorial.